Turnover is a topic of great discussion, particularly today. I think it has been for a long time. I think part of the discussion is, are we talking about turnover? And that may sound a little bit silly when we say the discussion of turnover, but I think there's a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders, supervisors, managers, they don't truly understand what their turnover is and what the consequence is. What we generally know is that the average turnover in the United States hovers around 20% annually, and that's across markets and industries. It can range, I've seen the average from 18 to 23%. What's interesting though is, do you know what the average turnover is for your industry? So if we start to look at different industries like hospitality, whether it's restaurants or hotels or health and fitness, some of those turnover rates can go 50, 60, 80, 100% a year. Right? I've talked to a lot of hotels over the years, and just as by way of example, some of their turnover rate can reach up to 150%, which means every 4, 5, 6 months we're turning over a position. Do we have any idea what that costs us? When we think about that, the average, we can generally use about 30 to 40% of an employee's annual compensation is what it costs us when they leave. 30 to 40%. Now that number obviously can fluctuate and generally gets higher the higher up in organizations the positions go, but generally entry-level positions, you're talking 30 to 40% of their total annual compensation is what it costs to replace them. That's crazy expensive, right? We think if we have to advertise position, we have to interview, we have to screen resumes and applications, all of our staff that are involved in the interviewing process, not to mention the training that we have to put the individuals through to get them up to speed, the training we gave to someone who is no longer there, the morale issue that comes up because now we're asking people to do extra work, we're paying for overtime, our productivity is down because we've got a gap or we're missing a person. There's all sorts of things that go into the idea of the cost of turnover, but it is really expensive, and I'm not sure we're paying close enough attention to it. We can look at turnover from two perspectives, and that is involuntary and voluntary turnover. What we're most concerned about at the moment is voluntary turnover, those people that are choosing to leave. Well, we know the number one reason employees leave our organizations is because of the culture or the relationship with their immediate supervisor, that work environment. What we know is that when employees are unhappy, dissatisfied, it leads to disengagement, and when employees are disengaged, I think we can say common sense would suggest they just don't work as well, right? They don't work as hard, they don't pay as much attention to quality. Turnover is a fundamental challenge we have in our organizations today, particularly at a time when there are lots of jobs around for people to get. They don't need to stick around in a place that they don't feel valued, cared about, or appreciated. If we're not taking care of them, they will leave. And when that employee leaves, that costs us. So I'm just going to encourage you today, one, do you know what your turnover rate is? Do you know what it is in your own, with the people that report to you, your department, your organization? Do we know how many employees we're retaining and for how long? I'll leave you this one example. Chick-fil-A is probably a phenomenal example of employee retention. Generally speaking, their average employee retention is well over 90% and has been that way for decades. In other words, they're losing far less than 10% of their employees annually, and it's usually closer to 5 or less percent they're losing. They're doing something right. People want to work there. And I think it's evidence then, as we see turnover decrease, retention increases, employee engagement increases, we see productivity goes up, errors and mistakes go down, we see customer satisfaction go up, we see so many benefits when we invest in our employees. So I hope today you'll take the time to consider, what is your turnover rate? What percentage of employees are you retaining, and what are you doing to help them be engaged?